Court is now in session. Danielle Danny. Evans walked into the courtroom, her wrists bound in tight metal cuffs. Her eyes scanned the room. Tired benches, unkind faces, and Judge Franklin Bannon looming behind the bench like a decaying statue of authority. He glanced up and sneered. "Another one, huh?" The words weren't loud, but the meaning was razor-sharp. The smirk he wore wasn't just disdain, it was practiced. Danny kept her head high. "No counsel present?" Bannon asked with mock surprise. No surprise there. Probably thought you could outsmart the system like the rest of them. She didn't respond. Bannon leaned forward, his voice lowering. "We have a store clerk statement. You were identified near the scene, wearing gym clothes. Convenient, isn't it?" "I have a receipt," Danny said, voice calm. "From the store." "No one asked for excuses," he snapped. Flashback, the arrest. The sidewalk was quiet when it happened. Danny had just left the gym, still catching her breath from a long session. Her earbuds were in, blocking the world out, until the world crashed in. Hands in the air. Now, 3 officers emerged from the shadows, guns drawn. Danny froze. "What's going on?" she asked. "You fit the description," one said coldly. "Female, black, gym clothes, braids. Suspect fled eastbound." "That's you." "I didn't steal anything." "Do you have a receipt?" "In my bag," she replied, slowly reaching. "Don't move," barked another officer. Moments later, she was on the ground, cuffed, the cold concrete pressing against her cheek. Back to the courtroom. "I have proof I didn't do this," Danny said again. "The receipt." Bannon waved her off. "And I'm sure it magically appeared." "Save it." The courtroom chuckled. Danny's eyes burned, but she kept her composure. "I want a lawyer." Bannon smirked. "We're not required to provide one until trial. This is just a preliminary hearing. And honestly, I don't see this going far. You're lucky I don't remand you." There was a flicker of doubt in his voice now. Danny noticed it. Midnight, jail cell, but a young Latina officer unlocked the bars. "You get one call." Danny dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "One ring, Black Harborough." "It's Danny. I was arrested. No evidence. Judge Bannon is presiding." "Silence, Danny." Black's voice sharpened. "Tell me everything." Slowly. She did. "Every word." "I'm coming," Black said. "Tomorrow morning. Don't say anything else." Danny hung up, a flicker of hope fighting through her exhaustion. The next morning, courtroom. The gallery was fuller now. Word had spread. Danny stood straighter as the doors opened again. Black Harborough entered, heels sharp against tile. "I'm counsel for Miss Evans." Bannon's smirk faltered. "She didn't list counsel. She does now. And I'm here pro bono." Black approached the bench with poise and fire. "There's no surveillance review. No written statement from the clerk. My client was arrested without cause and denied representation. That's illegal." Bannon leaned back. "This isn't a civil rights lecture. It's court." Black didn't flinch. "Then let's talk law. You skipped the evidence review. You mock my client. You set bail without proper process." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bannon cleared his throat. "This court will reconvene in 1 hour." But Danny could see the sweat forming on his temple. Outside the courtroom hallway. Black leaned close. "They're stalling. Trying to find something to cover themselves." "I told the truth," Danny whispered. "That should have been enough." Black smiled, but it was tight. "The truth matters. But you already know. It doesn't always win by itself." Danny nodded. She'd always known. Later that day, unexpected visitor. A man in a gray suit entered the courtroom with a thick folder. He handed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. Bannon's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. His eyes darted across the contents. "Your Honor," the man said clearly, "my name is Leon Gardner. I'm with the State Judicial Review Board. This case has triggered an automatic review. Your recent rulings have come under scrutiny." A hush fell that Danny's breath caught. Bannon looked up. "This is irregular." Gardner didn't blink. "So, is denying counsel to a woman falsely accused?" Black stepped beside Danny. "It's starting." Bannon's mouth opened, to object, to protest, to reclaim his court, but the words didn't come. And that's when the second set of doors opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, quiet and deliberate. Danny turned to Black, eyes wide. "What's happening?" she whispered. Black's expression shifted. "I think," she said slowly, "we're not the only ones who came for justice today." Judge Franklin Bannon's courtroom was suffocating, filled with whispered rumors and the dull thud of heavy footsteps. Danica Evans, finally free from the cold iron cuffs that had bound her wrists, stood tall, not just as a defendant, but as a force awakened. Beside her, Marcus Legrand's sharp gaze cut through the stale air like a blade, and the judge's once imperious demeanor flickered and faltered. Bannon's black robe hung awkwardly over his shoulders, as if his authority was just as ill-fitting. His smirk had vanished, replaced by a pale mask of dread. He stared down at the papers before him, but no words came. The courtroom was silent, expectant. "You have no right to treat her like this," Marcus declared, stepping forward with a voice that echoed beyond the courtroom walls. Denial of counsel, baseless accusations, and slurs that poisoned justice itself. This is not law, it's tyranny. Bannon's lips twitched, but he was broken. The judge who once ruled with contempt was now exposed as a relic of a corrupt system. The courtroom's tension shifted palpably as the people inside realized this was more than a trial. It was reckoning. Outside the courthouse, cameras and reporters gathered, flashing lights illuminating the building like a beacon. News spread quickly. Danica Evans, the young lawyer wrongfully accused, had stood up to a judge infamous for his racial bias and won. Danica had become more than a name. She was a symbol for thousands who had been silenced, dismissed, or crushed by a system stacked against them. But even as the city buzzed, Danica's fight was deeply personal. The scars left by the arrest, the insults, the near imprisonment. They burned, but they also forged a new resolve. That evening, Danica met her mother in a quiet cafe away from the cameras and crowds. Her mother's eyes were soft but fierce, reflecting years of wisdom and struggle. "You always carried this weight, even before today," her mother said, reaching across the table. "But now, your voice carries for those who cannot speak." Danica nodded, feeling the weight lift slightly, but knowing the road ahead was long. "I won't stop. Not until justice is real for everyone." Her mother smiled. "That's why they fear you." Back at the courthouse, the fallout was swift and severe. Judge Bannon resigned within a week, citing health reasons, but the public knew better. A formal investigation into his rulings revealed decades of systemic injustice, his courtroom becoming a symbol of oppression. Many cases he had ruled on were reopened. People who had lost faith began to believe again. Danica was invited to lead a task force focused on judicial reform, bridging the gap between communities and courts. Her journey had come full circle, from a victim to a leader. The days turned into weeks, and the city began to change. Town halls overflowed with passionate voices demanding transparency and accountability. Policies shifted. Judges underwent mandatory anti-bias training. Prosecutors and public defenders collaborated on fair protocols. One night, as the sun set behind the skyline, Danica returned to the spot where her nightmare had started, the cold concrete sidewalk outside the gym where she had been arrested. She stood silently, eyes closed, recalling the moment the world had seemed to collapse around her. The memory of cold steel cuffs and harsh accusations was still vivid, but no longer defining. Now, she breathed hope. From the shadows emerged faces, friends, advocates, those who had been silenced too long. They joined her quietly, standing in solidarity. Together, their voices grew louder, drowning out the silence that had once weighed so heavily. Weeks later, at a packed civic auditorium, Danica spoke to a crowd of hundreds. "We live in a time when justice must be more than a word," she said, voice steady and strong. "It must be action, accountability, equality." Her eyes scanned a room filled with faces of every background, every story. "This fight is not just mine. It's ours. For every person pushed aside, ignored, or punished unfairly. We cannot rest until every courtroom is a place of truth and dignity." Applause erupted that a young woman approached her afterward, tears in her eyes. "You gave me hope. You showed me that even silence can be broken." Danica smiled, feeling the full circle of her journey in the quiet of her apartment that night. Danica sat at her desk, drafting new proposals for legal reform. She paused, glancing at a framed photo of her parents. Her father, the governor's chief legal counsel, had taught her that justice was a path, not a destination. Her mother had shown her strength, and now, Danica carried their legacy forward. The weight of silence was no longer a burden. It was a catalyst. Months later, Danica's name appeared in newspapers, on screens, and in conversations across the city. She was invited to speak at universities, legal conferences, and community centers. She talked about the system that nearly broke her and the reforms needed to protect others. Her story became a beacon, but Danny knew the fight was ongoing. Each victory was a step forward, but the shadows of injustice lingered. One evening, as she left a community meeting, a young man approached her hesitantly. "Ms. Evans, my brother is in jail for something he didn't do. Can you help?" She nodded, her eyes fierce. "Yes, we will help." The courtroom, once a place of dread, had become a battleground for justice. Danica Evans, once silenced, now spoke for the voiceless. Her story was no longer unfinished. It was just beginning.